This is like August 19, September 19.
This is Q4. Rolling toward the end of the year. Holidays come around. We've submitted the documentation. I'm on the phone with the SBA over Christmas. Like, we are rolling. February 28th, the loan comes through. What do we do with it?
February of
2020.
This is so awesome. We're on the CEO Parenting Podcast, and my guest today is Jen Ryan. So Jen is a friend of Lindsay Miller, former guest on this podcast. That is a wonderful episode. We were just talking about Lindsay. She's an amazing human. And so the great thing about what we do is I did very, very little research on Jennifer. I know the two companies she owns. That's about it. And she's been here hanging out with me for like 30 or 40 minutes. And I have done everything in my soul not to ask bunches of questions. So Jen Ryan owns a restaurant called BLUEROOT and a company called Crew. That's all I know. So here's my first question for you is just give me the high level background of you growing up / journey to get to Birmingham. And that's probably a long thing, but just give me the high level stuff and I can dig deeper in as you go.
The highlights.
All right.
Born and raised Southern California.
Okay.
Oldest of 4 kids. Oldest of more than 30 grandkids. So big family, all on the West Coast.
Are they still there?
Most, yes.
Okay.
Parents are there. 2 of 3 siblings are there.
Parents still married?
Yes.
That's awesome.
And many aunts and uncles, one surviving grandmother, and cousins are kind of scattered as they've gone off to school and lived life, but the family home base is still Southern California.
Okay.
Kind of between LA and San Diego.
Wow.
I picked up
Orange County.
Orange County.
What's the name of the city?
I'm in Long Beach, California.
Okay.
Yes. So I picked up and left for college when I was 18, went to the East Coast, and was excited to try something new.
Okay, so in our conversations, you touched on the fact that you played college volleyball.
I did.
Where?
Princeton.
Okay, so we've got a nerd in our group, and I love it because I'm not extremely academically.
Let's not put any pretenses on here.
Okay, Princeton.
Yes, sir.
The Princeton, the one that people talk about.
Yes.
Okay, so you played volleyball at Princeton.
I did.
Okay, I already feel inadequate. Go ahead.
I was privileged enough to have that experience.
Sure.
It was amazing on all fronts.
Okay, Princeton.
Yes.
Is Princeton one of those places that you go and you get in and you get scholarship money because you're so freaking smart or you've done so well on grades that you get in and get a lot of scholarship money? Or is Princeton the thing where like you had to pay a bunch of money?
It's a combination of both.
Okay.
So, yep, no athletic scholarships, but earned some grant money, but definitely worked as part of my financial aid package. The thing about Princeton that's incredible, sorry, a little plug, is they have more grant money than many to be able to support kids from all over with tons of different types of backgrounds to come in and really enjoy the privileges of those 4 years.
So Princeton's private?
Yes.
So they can write their own rules.
Yes.
Which I love about private schools is you can do whatever the heck you want.
Yes, part of the Ivy. So
you said not on scholarship. So they don't have any athletic scholarships? Really?
Yeah, that may have changed, and there may be elements that I don't know, but it certainly wasn't part of my experience.
Okay, so you played volleyball at Princeton.
Yep.
Go ahead.
I was an English literature major, and I left, and when I graduated in 2006, the world was hot.
Man,
things were great. And I went to Wall Street and I worked in New York City for 10 years. And
with
I worked,
an English literature degree.
Correct. This is where you'll start to see some trends.
Sure.
There are a lot of wild card maneuvers.
Yeah.
A lot of unexpected twists, places I probably didn't deserve to be, but somehow figured out a way to find a way in.
How much did going and having a degree from Princeton play into the first job or two you got?
I think it played heavily into it.
So when you graduated, what did you go do?
I worked at Goldman Sachs for 10 years.
One place for 10 years?
One place for 10 years.
Hey, so do you ever heard of Cody Sanchez?
No.
Okay, go ahead. We'll talk about this later.
Okay.
Go ahead. So you go to Goldman Sachs
I go
for 10 years.
go to Goldman, and I work in a couple different departments over the course of those 10 years. And I'm going to speed through this because you asked for the highlight reel.
Yeah.
At some point, halfway into my 10 years in New York City, where I got to move to with 10 of my best girlfriends from college. I met incredible people. I got my face kicked in terms of work. I learned what it felt like to stand on my own 2 feet. And just as an aside, from my dad, who had 3 daughters. He had some goals for us, and one of those was to stand financially independent on our own 2 feet after college.
Did you have a lot of debt from going to Princeton?
No. I was lucky because combination of a lot of support from family, grant money, I worked through college. I was very lucky. And so halfway into my time in New York City, I met my husband.
Okay.
And he was
Where's
there.
he from?
Colorado.
Okay.
2 West Coast kids.
Yeah, sure.
Just hanging out in New York City.
What's he do at the time?
He was an orthopedic surgeon. He was in residency.
Okay.
Yep. Residency. We got matched on a blind date, and
2 friends hooked y'all up?
Yeah, families.
That's
Who
awesome.
knew? I know the world is sometimes
cool.
really
That's
small.
so cool, yeah.
Sometimes really small. And so we dated, got married, and Mike, my husband, got matched at a fellowship at Andrews Sports Medicine in Birmingham, Alabama.
No way.
And it's an algorithm that sends you where you are off to for fellowship. So there's not a lot of choice in the matter. But speaking of privileges, it was a pretty incredible email to receive to say, hey, you've been matched at Andrews. Because
So what year was this? So what year was this? You
This would've
graduated in
been-
06, and so 16. So y'all came here in 16?
that's right.
Oh, so y'all haven't been here long.
No, not long at all.
Okay, so we moved back in 17. So we haven't, oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So he gets here in 16, 17, and he's working. Where do you come to, I mean, there's no Goldman Sachs here in Birmingham.
Correct.
So what do you come to do?
So for those first couple of years, at first I will say the caveat to moving down, we'd both expected to only be here for 1 year for fellowship. And then we thought we'd swing back to the West Coast. And so after a year or so, the partners that he was working with had invited him to stay. And we had dinner one night and some bottles of wine, and we asked ourselves, is this something we should consider?
Sure.
And at the time, the likely scenarios for us were Colorado or California,
Yeah.
where our families were, because we didn't know anyone here. We'd met wonderful people, but it wasn't our community.
Yeah.
It wasn't where we intended to stay. But we put all of the cards on the table, and as we wanted to start a family and consider, opportunities for ourselves, we were open to Birmingham. And ultimately, for lots of reasons, we decided to stick around. And that was in 2017. We put roots down.
Okay, so fellowship. Tell me, so he goes from residency to fellowship. What is fellowship exactly? What's that in that?
It's a 1 year, and I think, and by the way, if anyone is listening to this with a medical degree, you'll probably correct me on this one, but depending on your discipline, you can go to fellowship for 1 or multiple years to really specialize. And so this fellowship was focused on sports medicine.
Okay.
Yeah, very specific. And so working with some of the great surgeons that tend to work with athletes, whether that is an elite NFL player or, the mom that needs a knee surgery and she wants to get back to skiing. It's everything in between. And so after that fellowship ended, real life essentially begins. Where are you going to be a practicing attending physician? And that
raising kids and your wife and all that stuff.
all the things.
Because everybody says that doctors give up their 20s. Is that true?
That's fairly true. From my secondhand experience, these guys, these women, these people that decide to subscribe to a career in medicine, it is selfless, it is involved, it is expensive,
Sure.
It is hard. While I was in New York, spending time with my friends and zipping off to weddings across the country, Mike was on call, Mike was studying residency, right?
So how long, were y'all married in New York or married here in Birmingham?
Right before we moved, so in New York for a short period of time, and then essentially right before we moved to Birmingham.
So you guys haven't been married too super long.
No.
So how long have y'all been married?
7 years.
7 years?
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, so you moved to Birmingham. You've got Goldman Sachs experience, 10 years of that. When you came to Birmingham, what did you do?
I solicited advice from one of my old bosses at Goldman because I knew the idea of working remotely didn't quite exist in the same frame that it does now. And so I had to figure out a new career path. I had dabbled in the startup world for a minute, but I had solicited some advice, and this advice that my old boss had given me was to put perfect on paper and to put a time limit to find it. And perfect, she said, was everything. It was the industry you want to work in, the number of hours you want to work, the money that is associated with that, the types of skills you get to flex, the type of boss you have. And so I went down the line of perfect. And for me, perfect was really specific. I'd always wanted to work in tech. I'd always wanted to work in the cyberspace. I wanted to work for a private company that was beyond the scope of like a very early stage, but had a really legitimate CEO on board. I wanted to be able to work remotely. I had compensation in mind. I wanted to be able to travel to different places. I wanted to work with, I was very specific. And I gave myself
extremely specific, because at 32 years old, I was coaching college football and had no freaking clue of any of that stuff.
Well, I got some good guidance, and I kind of knew.
And your 10 years from 22 to 32 was totally different than my 10 years. I mean, like business.
Yeah.
I mean, just different things. Okay, so you put this on paper.
And I gave myself 90 days.
Oh, gosh.
And at 90 days, I start crossing things off the list because I prioritize those elements. What's the most important for me? The most important for me was to be with my family and be able to work from Birmingham, Alabama.
Right.
And then everything else I'd give up.
When you say family, you mean your husband or?
Just Mike. Yeah, it was just Mike and me. Mike and me and the seeds of what we hoped was a broader family.
Right.
Right? And so that was important. And then everything else I thought was, I could give up. And so I gave myself 90 days and I found 4 companies that kind of checked the box. And then I whittled it down to 2. And I will. I'll tell you the one that I ended up working with, Forescout. And so I worked for Forescout.
What is that?
Forescout, cybersecurity company. And they had a base in Atlanta. They had an office in New York, but they were based in Silicon Valley. The CEO was very well known. The board was very legitimate. They had raised some capital. They'd been around. They had technology that was very legitimate. And I found every window and door I possibly could to knock down and essentially force my way in, if you will. And I forced an interview on a gentleman that ran operations.
How much did being 10 years at Goldman help you?
It helped a lot. I think it was credentializing for someone who didn't have technology experience because I was able to articulate the skills that I did have that I could parlay.
Your experience was finance.
It was, yeah.
Okay, so this is a great lesson. How much did you leverage your relationships at Goldman to get into Forescout?
I leveraged the brain power, the ideas, and the mentorship first.
Okay.
And I asked for support and guidance and sponsorship. And then I had those people that were listed as credentialed people to call, right? My reference checks.
Right.
And that was pretty compelling.
Absolutely.
But I didn't make any phone calls of my Goldman people asking if they knew anybody, if that makes sense.
I think the lesson here is this, is the sweat and the time that you put in working with whoever it is, whether it's a football coach that I worked with or someone at Goldman Sachs or wherever, those are relationships that God has given you to leverage and use. And use sounds like a horrible thing there, but it is something that you need to use to take the next step, because that's the experience that God had given you. And some people, it frustrates me. Well, I don't want to ask so-and-so to call. No, you gave, let's just use a name, John, 10 years of your life at this company. The least he can do is talk about how awesome Jen Ryan is to Forescout.
Yes.
And I mean, you saying all those things is really, really encouraging, because I tell people all the time, hey, have so-and-so call. Hey, put this on your resume, whatever. Because I'll give you a great example. And I don't know if you do this, because we'll talk about BLUEROOT. When I'm looking through, and I don't look through a lot of resumes, but if I look through resumes and I see Chick-fil-A on there, they go to the top of the list.
Yes, sir.
And that sounds so silly, because we are the total antithesis of Chick-fil-A, and so are you. But if they've got Chick-fil-A on there, especially if it's in a management something, they're different.
They are. And here, when I was at Goldman and looking through resumes, the stacks that would come in for a wild card kid like me from Southern California to having an English literature degree to somehow maneuvering my way into Wall Street, because I truly was a wild card kid in that scenario. But I promised my very first boss that despite not having an internship, despite not having finance experience, despite not taking, at that point, any econ classes, I knew nothing. I would be the first one in and the last one out, and I would outwork anyone, and I would also pick up things quickly. For me, I wanted to find other people that had that track record. And you know what I looked for on my resumes? What? College athletes.
Absolutely.
And so for me, identifying, and that could be club, it could be a chess team, it didn't matter, but somebody that had notable extracurriculars where it was a big part of his or her life.
And they didn't make a lot of freaking money when they did it.
No. The time management, the awareness, the ability to work on a team, the ability to fight through adversity, the ability to take feedback. Yeah. And those skills to me still translate into the best hires I've ever made, because it comes down a lot to me to work ethic and coachability.
Sure.
Right? And I found those traits in some of the best colleagues and athletes that I worked with. And so that's what I ended up looking for in those huge stacks of resumes from those 4.0 kids that were wildly successful from all of the
Super
schools,
smart.
you know,
Yeah.
right? And had all of the accolades and had all of the
All
list,
the boxes
the
were checked.
boxes were checked.
Yeah.
These kids tended to have an element that was sometimes hard to quantify.
Right. Sure.
And so anyway, that's what I looked for.
So, Force Scout. You get in at Force Scout.
Get in, Mike, in a twist, right? Mike gets a fellowship in Europe, and we're gone for 4 months.
Whoa.
Yes, this is all when he is
So you
signed.
came to Birmingham.
Yes, to
You're here
sign
for
on the
a
dotted
year,
line.
And then he goes to Europe for 4
Yes,
months.
so he really started full time when we got back from Europe. So we had this.
But Andrews and him were okay with him going to Europe.
They were supportive because he was going to train and essentially garner some skills in a very
Learn a
specific
skill
arena.
that he can
Be
come
able
back
to
and
bring back
but-
that
okay,
the
great.
practice didn't
I
have.
would
Right.
let him go too.
So great.
Okay.
So we go, we pick up and we go, and my company in California lets me work remotely. So I work in Europe for those 3 or 4 months. We take the company public. At the end of our time, we fly back, we take Force Scout public, and at that point in time,
What are you doing at Force Scout?
operations.
How
Operations.
big is the company? How many employees?
That's a great question. I need to gut check that one.
Ish.
Hundreds. Maybe.
Okay.
We're not terribly large, maybe breaching 500 at that point. Honestly, I'm feeling bad because I'm misremembering
No
how
big
big,
deal.
because we grew pretty quickly.
But it's not 50 and it's not 5,000.
Correct.
Okay.
And coming from Goldman, where we were over 30,000 people, and I'd
Sure.
worked at a startup where we had 10 people in a small room in Soho, it was in between those two.
Yeah. So okay. So you're doing operations.
Yep.
Give me the 10-second version of what operations is for a cybersecurity company.
So we're a sales company. We
Okay.
sell technology.
Sure.
So I'm working with the guys that are going to grow the company, and my role was really focused on strategy, finance, and operations for our U.S. business. Right? How do we go grow? What industries do we pursue? How did we engage with them? Where do we need to be supporting? We spent a lot of time with the government. We spent a lot of time in healthcare. But the world, the idea of IoT, smart technology, as
Yeah,
you know
sure.
today, was really becoming part of everyone's vernacular. People were starting to get it. And so the risks involved, particularly as a hospital or as a school or with all the tablets, I mean, you start to think about the risk and the risk you have to mitigate. And so that was our focus. How do we go grow the company and bring that technology to different areas and angles?
So you come back from Europe to
Yep.
take the public, to take the company public. Then what?
Then the question was, we're in Birmingham now. Do I want to continue to hop on a plane and fly? The company now is under different management, right? Because we've grown. I've worked for a public company before. Do I want to continue to do what I'm doing? And as I was having these, moments of crisis would be too strong of a word, but
Sure.
moments of reflection, consideration, as I was on my way to Birmingham Airport a lot, away from my, I guess at that point,
Newlywed-ish husband.
right?
Yeah.
And thinking through where we wanted to go, I was getting really hungry for good food, quality food. And I was really lucky to grow up.
That is not where I thought you were
No,
segueing.
no. But the point was there, I kept lamenting the lack of healthy fuel for me to be able to grab at the airport, on the way to the airport, something that was accessible that I had in New York or Los Angeles. And I was feeling like I wasn't taking good care of myself. And this is, again, when I was in the mindset of trying to be kind to myself before becoming a mom. And I was trying to balance the high stresses of what I was doing
Sure.
with the care on the side. And eating well was a really big part of that. And I didn't have the access that I did in those other two cities that I lived in.
Okay, so I'm going to backtrack a little bit. So these are short answers. Did you work a lot at Goldman?
Yes,
Like 50 or like 90?
between.
Okay. Have you always been, so a lot of college athletes tend to be, have you always been healthy as far as food and exercise?
Yes,
So it's part of who you are.
it's part of who I am.
Did you see your health decline when you moved here and you weren't eating as, quote, well?
Yes, just a little bit, but a little bit enough for me to recognize.
Enough for you to recognize. So you're talking about, okay, the other question, this is super personal. So when you're a Force Scout and y'all went public, did you have any sort of shares? Did you cash those out when you left? Okay, so go ahead.
So here I am contemplating our next step, our move. where to go from here. Mike is situated in his practice.
Yep.
We're finding friends. We're building a community.
Where do y'all live?
We're in Mountain Brook.
Okay.
Enjoying the idea of a different speed of life, right? Different than New York City. We now have neighbors that we know. I lived in one apartment building for 5 years, never knew my neighbors, right? It's just a different experience.
Sure.
And
Grass.
the grass.
Yeah.
We now have 2 dogs.
Yes.
Cost of living. I mean, all these things that as one gets older, one appreciates more. But when we decided at that dinner table before we left for Europe, when we asked ourselves if Birmingham was a place we wanted to be, because we were going to be here for more than just a minute, we promised ourselves we weren't just going to exist here.
Sure.
We were going to really live here.
Yeah.
We were going to do it. We're going to do it right.
Make friends.
Find
a church.
Invest
All
in the
the
community,
stuff.
all
Yeah.
of the things.
Yeah.
And part of that for me was figuring out how to contribute. And as a 30-something-year-old person who wasn't from here, who didn't have kids yet, I just didn't quite belong. I wasn't sure of how I was going to contribute to a community that wasn't inherently mine. Now, I projected a lot because Birmingham happened to be really welcoming to an outsider like me.
It is very welcoming.
To an outsider who had never worked in food, save for her very first job at a restaurant, had never run a restaurant, and wasn't from here. And
This is even more crazy than my story. So I'm going to back up. Finance for 10 years, cybersecurity for probably a year or 2.
3, yeah.
3 years.
2, yes.
You come home, hey, Mike, I'm going to stop my job making probably well over 6 figures, I would imagine, and we're going to open a freaking restaurant.
Well, there was a little twist in there.
Okay.
I had no intention of opening up a restaurant. So I wrote a manifesto to every fast casual healthy food spot that I knew of. And I'll hold off from naming them right here.
I was fixing to ask you a name. Go ahead.
Brands in California and New York City, and I sent them everything they needed to know: demographic information, median household income,
Locations,
competitive intel,
growth rate.
I
all
basically
that.
handed them a book and said, "Hey, I am starving for something like you. You would crush it down here. Please, please."
Let me ask you a question. Do you really think they would crush it down here, though?
Well,
In your
based on-
soul, you thought, because I'll buy it every day.
based on the data. But no, what I learned, Birmingham is a supporter and lover of homegrown organic goodness, right? And so when you think about chains, which are the people to whom I was writing,
corporate.
yeah. And not only was there not, and this is where you sort of say things are meant to be and they work out how they should, I didn't get responses from most of those people. And people that did said, Birmingham, a tertiary city in the deep South, that is not on our radar. Because despite what metrics you might send that might look good, there's no way that something that we do in this realm of healthy food would ever make it. And so, yes, I went home to Mike and I said, this is wild. If I cannot have somebody else bring this to Birmingham, I'm gonna build it myself. But I gave myself a similar exercise to my old boss at Goldman, and I gave myself a time frame.
Would you call it perfect what?
She just told me to put perfect on paper.
Perfect on paper,
Yeah.
that's what it was.
And perfect for me was all those things I mentioned.
Yeah.
Perfect for this was very specific milestones within a 12-month period of time. Because at that point in time, it was either going to happen or it wasn't. And I wasn't about to go throw our life savings down the toilet.
Sure.
And so we checked in every quarter to make sure that milestones were being hit. And this was small goings at the farmer's market.
So this is 2019.
Yes.
So 2000, we love the farmer's market. Pepper Place Farmer's Market, plug. It's awesome.
It's amazing.
So 2019, you leave the nice job, and then you go into this. What are the first steps that you? Because this is like what people want to know. Mm-hmm. So you leave a great job that you love. Now you have a huge advantage because you've made money in the past, and your husband does really well because he's a doctor. Obviously, too, at this point, he's probably got a lot of debt because of all that good stuff. But financially, there's a lot of money coming in the home. But there are a lot of people like you, Jen, that are extremely hard workers, but they're just like, I know that there's something else out there. Mm-hmm. So what was the transitioning point of like, how did you, and here's what everybody wants to know. Mm-hmm. Hey, how did you start?
Mm-hmm. So another piece of great advice I got from a mentor from my early days was be really specific about your gaps.
Your gaps.
Your blind spots,
Okay.
where
Where you're
your
not good?
skills are lacking,
Okay, yeah.
right? And so for me, it was obvious. I did not grow up with a culinary background, right? I cook at home. I have decent skills. I'd call Mike the better cook in the family.
Yeah.
The point being, I knew if I wanted to even remotely move into food, I was going to need to hire for this space.
Okay.
And so in August of 2018, I started to put feelers out. And I asked everybody I knew if they knew people, chefs in town. And I met as many people as would be open to meeting with me over coffee to talk about the idea of slinging salads in Birmingham, Alabama.
Okay.
And one person happened to be not only open to the idea, but subscribed to this philosophy of understanding where food comes from. He had lived all over the world, and he was interested in doing something new. And that is the chef that I teamed up with, Robin Bashinsky.
Okay.
And Robin acted as a consultant for those first 6 months to just help me put a menu together. And Robin joined me every Saturday at Pepper Place Market once we launched. But that was the beginning. We just had to put a menu together and ask ourselves, is this interesting? And then I talked to friends, because you have to socialize the idea and get some feedback,
Sure.
right? Once we had enough supportive anecdotal evidence coming through the door, yes, there are people that would like the idea of this. That's nice, but will people actually pay for this,
pay
right?
money for it.
So
I'll try it, but I'm not going to pay for it.
exactly.
Yeah.
So I did two things. One, I joined a Create Birmingham Monday night course that essentially helped me formalize some of the needs of running a small business. How do I get my permits? How do I get my licenses? Do I have my legal stuff rolled up? I mean, these are things I think I knew how to do, but I looked to someone else to help give a little bit of structure to that. And that was helpful. And that was 6 to 9 p.m. for like 8 weeks.
Okay.
Okay. So a little bit of structure, and then I got resources.
You get a chef to consult. You're paying him a little bit, and you come up with a menu, and then you go to this course that just like the nuts and the bolts that no one really ever thinks about.
Right. It's really the infrastructure, the foundation, right? And it helps you think through the story and the narrative, but I needed more support on how do I make sure that my risks are mitigated, right? My legal considerations are handled, my insurance is covered, like
LLC, insurance,
all this stuff, right? Okay, so that just helps me check some boxes, which I'm sure I could have figured out, but it really gave me the checklist.
Yeah.
It also opened me up to free resources. So I used the hell out of free resources in Birmingham. Create Birmingham. Forge is a place that's a co-working place here, and Kim, who runs it, was really supportive in those early days. It's also how I met my current lawyer, Josh, at Gatehouse.
Okay.
I am blanking on all of the other wonderful nonprofits that helped me.
Those are plenty. Yeah, that's good.
But the point being, it opened the door to the fact that there were free resources in town. And people who saw someone with a business plan and some gumption and some ownership said, I'm happy to introduce you. And so it just started that snowball.
Yeah.
And so that was point number one. Point number two, when the Pepper Place Farmers Market opened that April, it was April 20th, 2019, my parents flew in. Robin and I get there at 4 o'clock in the morning, and we're there testing the market after this anecdotal sort of support in the fall. We're testing with our friends. Now we take it to the streets.
So you started in 18. When in 18?
August is when I met Robin.
So you met Robin in 18, August of 18. So you launched your first thing in April of 19. So
yes.
8
less
or
than
9
a year.
months.
Yeah, less than a year. Formed the LLC in January, handled the nuts and bolts, put together the business plan, formalized my, costs, the out-of-pocket costs I was going to need, and I just focused on Pepper Place. Just one venue, a few things on the menu, very
Farmers
simple.
markets. Here's for anybody. I don't care if you sell food, you sell jewelry, you sell tomatoes, shirts. Farmers markets are the ultimate testing ground. If you got an idea you want to test, and that sucker doesn't sell anything there, it needs to be revamped.
Yep.
And so you did this in April.
Yes, and through the summer.
Okay.
And after 2 months, we started seeing, so we're rolling into Q2. We started in Q2 and we're rolling into Q3 in 2019. And the data is telling us that people like this. The data is supportive. There's enough money coming in to say, okay, keep going. We're not rolling in cash by any means, but we have enough people, enough loyal customers, and enough people that are interested. So I go to Sloss.
And the only way people are getting your stuff is through on Saturday at Pepper Place. So for those of the people that don't know, because there's a lot of people that don't know what BLUEROOT is, tell me what you guys specialize in. Those early days, what were you selling?
Really focused on salads. So today we do salads, burgers, and bowls, but in those early days, it was really two things. It was salads, and it was a couple of superfood snacks.
Yes,
right.
Superfood snacks.
Very simple.
Those are great samples, by the way.
Very, very simple.
Gets people in the door.
And so after 2 months, we saw traction. and we saw milestones being hit, and we looked at each other and we said, okay, let's keep going. Because every quarter, that was a promise to myself. I'm not going to go spend money unless it's working. I walked.
Only spend money that you're making.
Correct. Well, look, everyone has their own philosophy on growth and the trajectory, but for us, it was we needed to be thoughtful, and I didn't want to run. Look, we didn't have, countless amount of funds to use either. We needed to be smart about it. And I also needed to fail fast to recognize that this wasn't going to work. I'd rather pivot into something else and spend my time appropriately.
Okay. In this first 8 or 9 months, did you take out any debt to do any of this?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay.
That's coming.
Okay.
And so this was all, I was in a lucky position to be able to leverage what we had, and we were really, really responsible with how we were spending, right? So just incremental and just making tweaks based on feedback.
Paying yourself at all?
No.
Not a dime?
No.
Got it.
Still don't. Probably shouldn't say that, but I still don't. But this is the life of a startup. And other people will tell you, add yourself to the payroll. And I'm sure there are arguments for both sides. For me, I didn't, and I haven't because...
But if you pay yourself $40,000, what could $40,000 do to a small business? I mean, I just use that as an example. Just $40K. I mean, that's a lot of money that you could...
It would be a hemorrhaging hole that a Band-Aid couldn't fix. And it would be it'd be difficult to manage. And it'd also be difficult to explain once we start to grow and we start to identify opportunities for, expansion. And that's hard. So in any event, like I said, there's probably different ways to think about this, but for us, it was incremental adjustments. And the biggest thing outside of this, so number one, the business class. Number two, starting focus with a narrow menu in a narrow space. Number three, I asked for feedback all the time. I sent surveys. I asked for people it was before the era of really QR codes. I asked them to fill out questionnaires. It was all anonymous, but I wanted to know what people thought. Yeah. I asked them everything. I asked about pricing behavior, how they spent money. I asked them if they liked to spend money on lunch or breakfast. We were testing a breakfast menu. I've never launched a breakfast menu. It's never really been something that people want. Mm-hmm. And so there was just a lot of engagement. And once people recognized that my feelings weren't going to get hurt, they would tell me, right?
It's the hardest thing, especially dealing with like people that you know, trust, and love, is like I'm looking at them and saying, I don't care. I'm the big boy. Tell me exactly what it is.
You're going to save me time and angst, please.
Please. Okay, so you're getting the feedback. Mm-hmm. And you're going through Q3.
Mm-hmm. We're going into Q3, and we have enough momentum that I walk into Pepper Place, and I ask them if they will rent me a vacant space, because I see this vacant space every Saturday.
The one you're in now?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
And it was totally vacant. And I said, can I please take it over? I'll get a health department license. I'll get my business license. I'm going to put 2 fridges in there, and I'm going to test, because they were coming to us asking if we would put our roots down there. And I said,
Who did?
Pepper Place. We're seeing momentum. This is really interesting. Would you ever consider being a part of our community from a brick and mortar perspective?
Because there's not a fast casual restaurant down there.
No. But the questions are why? Yeah. The questions are who's coming? The only way to test that is not to ask people, because they'll say, oh, I'll come. Yeah. I'll leave the office. That sounds great. No, my friend, we needed a test. So in July, the worst month of the year, right? Because of summer.
Everybody's on vacation.
I pulled 2 fridges in there that I bought. And I got my permits and my licenses, and we had our commissary kitchen, so we were preparing food, sealing it, and then we would have been at the kitchen station at that point in Irondale. Yeah. Okay. So we had 2 different ones, and before we grew up and built our own kitchen, and they leased that space for me for 30 days for $500. And I got the insurance coverage, and I put 2 fridges in there, and I opened up.
30 days.
30 days.
That's crazy.
It's crazy. But it was so vacant that I probably am overstepping here, but I had the storyline and the narrative to say I could not sign long-term unless I was able to test.
Here's the lesson. The lesson is this. Ask. What are they going to say? No?
Laugh me out of the room? I've already been laughed out of the room.
So you got a 30-day lease to test this.
It wasn't even a lease. It was just I borrowed it.
It was $500. Give us $500. It's like mom and them. Give me $500. You can set up for
you cover the utilities. You handle the stuff. Make sure you've got insurance. If anything happens, it's not on us. And, we put the legal documents in place.
Sure.
But the point is, there was nothing going on. It's the worst retail month of the year. So I knew that if I could prove this worked at the worst time of the year, in a place where I didn't even have a kitchen and I had 2 fridges, I opened on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and then Saturdays in the market for lunch only, like 11 to 2, and then Saturdays. It was a solid enough month for us to say there's something here.
Okay. After the month, what happened?
So then we start to go wholesale.
This is 19.
Summer of 19. We continue forging forward at the farmers markets. Now we're expanding and we're catering. Now we're delivering to places. Now we're teaming up with offices.
Okay.
And now we're also going wholesale in fitness studios. right?
Okay.
So Pilates studio or a spin studio, and we're starting to get engaged with women between 25 and 45 that are looking for healthy options.
Okay, when you do that, are they pre-ordering and you're dropping off?
So at first, I was giving away the farm.
Yeah.
I said to them, I will charge you for what is sold at the end of the week, right? These are our superfood snacks. We're not doing salads. We're doing long shelf life stuff that can be in the fridge for a couple of days. People can take it home and enjoy for 2 more weeks. Very low risk,
No risk by them.
very easy. And so they're not paying up front, they're paying on the heel. So there was no risk for them to say, let's try it. And so for me to come in, I gave samples. I was there to talk about the food. I was able to talk to them about ingredients, give the spiel all on my own time and dime.
Yeah.
And all I did was drop goods off and we just tested. And we took track of, kept track of the metrics, how things were selling, what wasn't, got a lot of feedback. And that really started to ramp in Q4, as did catering. So in Q4 of 2019, I went to the bank and I said, I think it's time. Okay, now it's time. Can the SBA support this business plan? Here's what we want to do. Here's how much space we need. Here's the scope of the project.
When you say catering, because that's the space I'm in, who are you catering to?
Mostly law firms, corporations, box salad lunches. Hey, I need a healthy lunch that I can bring in.
Yes. Somebody can grab
Simple
it.
menu. I had 5 things to choose from. Really kept it narrow.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. They can
Okay.
come in. It's labeled. It's clear. We drop it off at a certain time. Set it up. It's done.
Great.
Not chafing dishes. Not hot. I mean, very simple. Right. For us, we were a team of maybe 4 at that time.
Okay.
Right. A couple 1099s that were able to come now and then,
Sure.
and Robin and me. And so in Q4, build a business plan, update the pro forma, look ahead at projections.
Take it to the bank.
And they're like, okay, this looks like a little bit of a flyer. Let's stress test this. You've only been going for a year now. Let's roll. But here are all the stipulations, right? You and Mike are on the hook. This is an SBA loan. This is what this means, connected to the house. I mean, a lot of the personal risk we assumed, right? But we
Yep.
went to the bank instead of outside investors. I wanted to maintain control.
Yep.
Give or take, and that may or may not be the right call for everybody, but for me it was, if I'm gonna go down in flames, I don't want anyone else to go down with me, but I wanted to be able to. So we went to the bank and we tried to be as responsible as possible about how much we really needed.
SBA loan.
SBA
but
loan.
it's personal guarantee.
Personal guarantee.
How much did you borrow?
$695,000,
$700,000. Okay.
right? And that
Did you
meant
have to? Okay, so in this, this is an education for people. You borrowed $700K. Did you have to put anything down?
yes,
at all?
yes.
Okay.
And I can't remember exactly what it was, but it wasn't small.
15 or
right.
20%.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Still a lot of money.
You got to put a lot of money and you connect it to your house and like you're on the hook.
Yeah,
right?
no, sure. It goes down like,
Goodbye.
yeah.
But at the same time, this was this give and take, this family conversation. I personally did not want to bring other investors in. A little bit of it had to do with the fact that I hadn't done this before, right? There's a real, concern and nervousness of how do I take it to the next. You need money to make money,
Sure.
right? I wanted to take it to the next level. I looked at the options on the table, and also, maintaining a level of control.
That's it.
So that's where we ended up, right? So that was a decision for us and our family, and it's why I don't sleep at night, right? It's why I still, think and worry about everything that could go wrong because we're on the hook. But it's in a healthy way now because now we've got, a couple years under our belt. We'll get there. Anyway, so my SBA loan closes.
Let's 19. This is like August 19, September 19.
This is Q4. Rolling toward the end of the
Q4
year,
19.
holidays come around, we've submitted the documentation. I'm on the phone with the SBA over Christmas, like we are rolling. February 28th, the loan comes through. What do we do with it?
February of
2020.
This is so awesome. Okay.
So
But not really.
No. So there's money sitting in the bank and I don't touch it because we don't know what we're going to do. We've got plans for Pepper Place. We've got an architect. We've got a contractor. We've got build out.
Which is expensive in itself.
It's all expensive. We don't touch that money because I am unsure of where the world is headed.
So you get the thing approved in February. This is crazy. The timing's nuts. You get the thing approved in February, and you're like, whoa. You didn't
Pump the brakes.
You didn't take out a dime.
No,
so
pump
you're
the
not
brakes.
having to pay a payment at this time.
No, that's terrifying, right? So there's no reason to introduce more risk when there's too much uncertainty in the world at large, right? And so flash forward, now we're still running on, what we thought was our revenue streams. Wholesale, fitness studios, those are closed. Catering, nobody's in the office. Our revenue goes to zero. Farmers market closes.
Yep.
We have a few bucks coming in from the farmers market that was outside. If anyone remembers this, in Birmingham, you could drive through the farmers market.
Right down that road, right down the road, yeah.
Yeah, and all of us, including the
hated
farmers,
that.
it was awful.
Oh.
It was awful.
You had
And
to order
ahead.
pre-order. You had to pre-order. I remember that because my freaking family was pissed because like my kids love the farmers market. Okay, so you're making just pennies doing
pennies, and I'm still paying people.
Yeah.
And so in April of 2020, I'm out of money, right?
Yeah.
At this point, it's like you either infuse it yourself or you say, it's been fun.
Yeah.
And by the grace of God, I was awarded Entrepreneur of the Year by La Dame in Birmingham. Don't ask me how, why, or...
Who is that?
It's a chapter of a global organization of women in food. People in this organization are women that you would know. The Slosses are in there, Kristen Hall, I mean, like Ashley Mack. I mean, women that you would know in town. And this is a chapter of a global organization. And so at some point, I've met some of these women. They've taken me under their wing. They've given me some advice. They've been incredible.
Coffee, stuff like that. Yeah.
How do I think through this scenario? It's March. We're not sure what's going on. And they named me the Entrepreneur of the Year with a $6,000 check. And you know what that did?
What?
It covered payroll for April.
Wow.
That's the only reason we survived. And we roll into May, and now I don't really have anything to show for where we're going. So we have to figure out a way to pivot. It is spring of 2020, and light bulb goes on for a friend of a friend named Melanie Pounds, who runs Patina in Mountain Brook. It's a beautiful store, and we got connected because Melanie had an idea that she could turn her closet into something that might help us. A walk-up window. So we spend $30,000 and outfit this thing. We get the health department, the police department, the fire department, and the city of Mountain Brook to come and scope out 180 square foot space that used to be a closet. And we ask them, can we turn this into a food safe place if we make everything at our commissary?
Sure.
Can I put 2 fridges, a mop sink, a 3 comp, the ceilings?
Where is this at?
In Mountain Brook Village,
Yeah.
on Petticoat Lane. It's a tiny one-way street. And if you drive down today, we'll talk about what we've done since then, you drive right by it. It's 10 feet wide. And we added an awning, a front door, and in July of 2020, we opened as a walk-up window where we could sell our goods, and we convinced the city to give us 3 of those pull-up parking spots. So people could order online, flip their trunks open, and we could run out salads, family meals, and we just did whatever we could.
Hustle.
Yeah. Hustle.
So at this time, how are you marketing? Because there's not, like, what are you doing? Are you doing social? Or are you doing email? Are
Social
you doing
media, email. I hadn't figured out the SMS campaign, which, by the way, is an incredibly amazing feat if you're a business owner. Do that. It's wonderful, and it yields great results, I found. But we were just emailing. I emailed a newsletter every week with the menu. I was on social media, which I'm pretty bad at, and I still run our own social media, so you can judge for yourself. And it was word of mouth. It was just, it was as old school as putting flyers on cars in Mountain Brook Village.
You're in a great demographic, though.
And people were looking for good food.
They were stir crazy, too. This is only 3 months in, and people are like freaking wanting to go do something.
Correct. So this was our holdover. This was our Hail Mary pass, our bridge to the long-term play. It was never part of the business plan.
So you do this in 20. Is that place still there now?
It is. But we've evolved it, and now it's a broader market called Teeny's Take-Home Market.
Okay.
A really cool woman named Tina is running it day to day. She makes beautiful Mediterranean family meals. We've got BLUEROOT stuff in there, the breakup cookies in there. But the idea is it's women in food. It's a market.
So it's not BLUEROOT.
Not just BLUEROOT. Now we've expanded. Yeah. So now you've got other women in food at this market. You can go grab all the goods, grab Tina's lasagna for dinner, grab a protein box from BLUEROOT for lunch tomorrow, grab a breakup cookie because they're so darn good, and other goods in there too. And so the idea there was, there were too many women asking me how I broke in. And I was like, well, I don't really have a great playbook here. A little bit of it was luck, a little bit of it was knowing, but what can we do to pay it forward?
Sure.
Let's open the doors. So now we are able to support more women in food, that tiny little market, and Tina's doing a phenomenal job. And we get to support each other because it's hard.
Very difficult.
It's hard. And
food is a hard industry if you don't have any, I say money. I don't know if it's money or if it's just, if you got to be able to work hard.
You can't outsource it.
You
got to show up
hard.
And it's in person.
Yeah.
And this might be, the next, 6 months were us slugging away at the outpost is what we called it, this little walk-up window. But by December, we thought we had some light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
So we thought, okay, maybe we can start
Have you touched the 700K yet?
Not yet.
Not a dime.
Not yet. We started to at the end of the year. So at the end of the year, now we're like, let's move. We're going to do Pepper Place. We're going to break ground in January.
Okay.
I'm going to lock in all of my equipment pricing in 2020. So money starts to go out the door. Hundreds of thousands of dollars start to go out to all the things you need.
Sure.
You need a walk-in, you need a hood, you need all the stuff. We haven't even gotten to small wares and labor, but we start to spend money. We have the plans drawn up for Pepper Place that had kind of been drawn, but now we're able to really hit the gas. We've got the contractor ready to go, and on January 10th, 2021, we break ground.
That's awesome. How long did it take?
We opened in July.
So 6 months.
But to be truthful, there was a little twist in there. I had a baby in May of 21. So we were ready to open in May. I couldn't.
Yeah, sure.
And that was this joy and stress that was coming all together with, oh gosh, this one thing we've been so excited about and we've waited for.
What I tell people all the time, your 2 babies.
Yeah.
Your business is for you a second child, for me a 4th child. And the problem that we get into is that we get frustrated when our people don't do the things that we do. Mm-hmm. But I would do anything for my best friend's kid. But he's going to love her so much more. And it is like a second kid because you created it. You've cried over it. You've sweat over it.
Yeah.
All those things.
All the things.
And having 2 kids, and that's what it is an absolutely amazing thing. And you can't really, just like I could never explain to you your kid and what you feel like when you see it, you can't do that. You can't do it until you see it.
No.
And you can't do that from a business owner's perspective either. Like I can identify with you extremely well because I've been in your same shoes. But there's a lot of people that don't own their own business, no freaking clue.
No.
And I have to tell myself this all the time. Thomas, you can't get frustrated with them.
I know.
Because if they were doing it like you wanted it to be done all the time, they would have their own thing.
It's fair.
And you have to have grace there.
Yes.
Now, when you get the ones that you love and that you think, man, they got it, you got to hold on to them.
You hold on tight. You're so darn lucky.
Okay,
Yeah.
so July.
So July we open.
21.
So yes, I have a baby in May. Vaughn is born, and she is a gift, and it has been a road to become a parent.
Right.
And it was those moments were so sweet, but I really wasn't sure how to navigate opening a business when I had a team and payroll and bills waiting for me to say, let's go. But I also wanted that moment.
How much are you working right now?
Well,
Let's talk about July when you open to September, October. How much are you working?
right at the outset,
Yeah.
a lot. And Vaughn is with me in a front pack, a lot of that, but it's still kind of weird COVID time.
You know
it's
what?
just
I guarantee I saw you in there because I remember seeing a woman with a baby in there.
well, that was me, my friend. That was I, and I had no qualms about.
remember that.
Yeah, and we didn't prance around the kitchen when she was a newborn, but
Sure.
the point is, I would go in to check on my team, and so I relied heavily on Robin and the people that we had, and we're so lucky. And we overhired in those early days to make sure that we were able to give all the love to the guests when they walked through the door, because we were still figuring things out. Yeah. And I wasn't there to do what I like to do, which is tighten the nuts and bolts, because I'm not perfect at this, but I generally subscribe to, that old adage, you don't rise to the level of your goals, but you fall to the level of your systems, right? Like the systems and processes in place. And I hadn't been in a place to be able to tighten all those that I wanted to, right, with a newborn.
Man, yeah.
And so I'm relying on other people. And this is a learning moment for me to be okay with outsourcing some things, relying on people, accepting help.
It was probably a blessing in disguise because you couldn't be there all the time.
No.
And the Lord probably knew that, like, you've obviously proven that I hate to say workaholic, but like you enjoy work.
Yeah.
And if it would have been different, you would have probably worked too much.
Mm-hmm.
But you've relied on them from the get-go.
I've been really lucky. Yeah.
That's unbelievable.
It's crazy. So here we are. Vaughn is just a few months old. We're trying to navigate this time as new parents. We don't have any family here. We were so lucky to have parents, come in. But to be truthful, we've got a great community, but we don't have the infrastructure that a lot of people have in terms of family, right?
When we were in Tennessee, it was the same thing.
So you're figuring it out as you go. You're learning as new parents. And it's like you said before, everyone can give you the books and the anecdotes and this, that, and the other. It is not until you're in those moments that you realize, oh my gosh, I've got to figure this out. And so this was right around the time we start. So the business is now open. I'm working as much as I can, but still trying to sort of navigate these new dual roles that I have. And right around this time in Q4 of 2021, the staffing crisis hits.
Okay.
Like nobody wants to come to work.
Nope.
We can't find anybody that wants to work in the hospitality industry.
They want $7 more an hour than they were getting.
And inflation is starting to creep up. The supply chains are still have us, around, like a noose around our neck. This as a business owner, the headwinds that we were feeling in those moments, a lot of people felt like at that time, at least my perception in those sort of later months of 21, like we were in the clear. Okay, it's behind us. And for those of us that were running businesses, it felt like the second tsunami was just about to hit.
Sure.
Right? And we weren't really sure how to manage what was coming. Right. I wasn't sure how to prepare for the cost inflections. I wasn't really prepared for what my workers were going to be asking. I wasn't sure of how to support moms that were working for me that were trying to manage, school closure still, and like kids that were behind because just so many things. And
the cost. Here's what people don't understand. I'll give you one example. The thing that people don't understand, and the reason that every restaurant that you go to, the cost went up, is I remember chicken, for example, was $40 a case. I remember at its height, and I don't remember exactly when it was, but at its height, it was $143 a case.
Yeah.
40 to 143 in less than 6 months. And a lot of things were doing that. So people that are griping and complaining about it, like, there's no way I can 2.5 times your price. So there's a lot of eating, no pun intended, that we're doing on the profit.
Correct. And then,
to make it
palatable for this guest to be able to buy something. It doesn't even incorporate the rise in labor costs.
No.
Right? So there's all these elements. So look, if one runs a business and you're in food, you understand all of these elements. It's not appropriate for me to go into a long economic explanation for the guest that decides she doesn't understand why, this used to be X dollars and now it's X plus 5, right? And there's all the reasons, but in that moment, that person's perception is their reality. And that experience is really negative for that person. So finding ways to navigate those moments again and again and again and again, and just wanting to shout to people, I wish you understood what was going on behind the scenes. But it doesn't matter. That's not our job to do that for those people. Our job is to somehow figure out at that point in time, what is the business plan? What is sustainable? How can I make sure we're supporting the team that we have? Right. And do we need to narrow the scope? And we kept simplifying.
So this is late 2021. Has Crew started yet?
This was the genesis of Crew. So 4 colleagues in the industry and I got together, pulling our hair out.
Who?
Brett Abels is the one who got us together. Brett. Lindsay Noto.
I don't know Lindsay.
Lindsay works at Cisco, but is a owner-operator, has run restaurants, a chef by trade, amazing. Stuart Price, who is recently in Birmingham, but grew up in the food industry, running operations and essentially a career in the industry. And then Kenny Kung, Kenny Kung, our CTO, who was formerly at Telegraph and is now full-time with Crew. And so the 5 of us got together.
Why did they bring you in the mix?
It's a great question.
You're a food virgin at this point.
I don't know anything.
Right.
All I know is that there's a problem. You'll have to ask Brett that himself, but he went out. It's another example of being a wild card. Maybe right place, right time. Had it not been for BLUEROOT, there's no way I would have been introduced to that group, right? So you think about the sequencing of this all. It's sort of the meant to be, if you will. But they were nice enough to invite me into this conversation.
Give me the 30-second version, your elevator pitch of Crew. CROUX.
Correct. Crew, it's spelled like roux, like the base of a dish, but it sounds like crew, join the crew. Play on words there. It's where talent meets opportunity. This is essentially flexible work opportunities for folks in the hospitality industry. So we're trying to support 2 sides at once, one of which is the people like me that are running businesses that are understaffed, and we are trying to also flex our labor force when we need it. I don't need the same number of people I need on a Monday when everyone has a New Year's resolution that I need on a Friday when everyone wants to eat barbecue. But I need people to work.
Bodies.
At the same time, the workforce and the behaviors behind this workforce have changed. right?
Yeah.
The idea of flexibility and wanting to get paid immediately have now taken precedent over stability.
Yeah.
Right. And that could be generational. That could be this country versus others.
Right.
The point is we're seeing these trends emerge. And so how do we marry what's happening, whether you agree with it or not? I mean, I didn't grow up in this, sort of mindset. I showed up to my desk.
Right.
I got my work done. And it wasn't for me to say when it was time to go home.
Right.
Right. No. Someone else was dictating what my workload looked like. But I also didn't, I also watched what it meant to be a worker in our industry during COVID when every other industry got to phone it in and work through Zoom or have a flexible schedule. Industries like healthcare and hospitality had to show up. And there are enough stories out there. We know them where people just haven't been treated because they don't have good leaders or they don't have, good infrastructure or they aren't supported. The point was there's these things happening at once. Businesses were in need and the talent was asking for something different.
Right.
So to be able to marry them on an app where businesses that need staff can post shifts and people based on their skills and their experiences can get matched with those shifts.
So here's how I use it. Okay, Crew. It's an app. I talked to Brett. Got introduced to Brett by Tina Leolio. Okay, wonderful lady.
Tina is who runs Teeny's Take Home Market.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, so I go on the app, and if I need a dishwasher, I need a prep cook, or I need a server, or I need anything that has to do in restaurant hospitality / catering, I go on there, I post the description of what I need. I need this person for this many hours for this, to this, to this. I put my rate that I will pay them in there. And then Crew charges, I want to say 16, 18% of that, and I have to pay them, which is fine. But I post that.
Yep.
When I post it, there are multiple people that will apply, quote, apply for that job. And I can look at their resume-ish, but I also here's what I look at, okay, feedback. I look at cancellations.
Yes, me too.
Okay. I look at cancellations, and I also look at how many shifts they've worked.
Correct.
So I look and see, Jen Ryan worked 15 shifts, 1 cancellation. I can roll with that. And then I literally hit one button, and they're coming to work for me. And then there's a messaging part in there to where I can message Jennifer and say, here's this, here's that, whatever.
Right.
They can ask questions.
Right.
It's wonderful. It's wonderful. I've used it mainly for prep people and dishwashers.
Yes.
So on dishwashers, I get 4, 5, 6 applicants. It's very, very difficult for me, though, to hire someone that's never had a job. And I know that you have to do that at some point, and I've done it a little bit. But I've found some really, really good people on there. And it's a great app if you're in, what cities?
Birmingham, Tuscaloosa, Auburn, Muscle Shoals, Florence.
If you're in any of those cities and you're in hospitality, it is a wonderful or you know someone in those cities. It is a wonderful app to get on.
Coming soon to Georgia and Florida.
Coming soon to Georgia and Florida. So there's the pitch, and I made the pitch. You didn't make it. I love it. So, and I use it. And here's the thing: I used it before I knew you. So, I think I'm a huge fan.
Great validation.
So, okay. So Crew has started.
Yep. We win a tech competition. Brett gets the 5 of us together. We lob some rendition of Crew through this tech competition here in Birmingham that's focused on food tech. The idea was, again, in some way, shape, or form, to support staffing, because that's what all of us were griping about. Yeah. That was the beginning, the seedling. And over the next 3 months, we take that seedling and we start to talk about it, we start to sharpen it, we start to socialize it, and all of a sudden there's some real legs here. But we got to figure out how the heck we're going to take this to the next level. It's a good thing Kenny has some experience building apps. So we're able to throw our own capital in. We've got tech and engineering brain power as part of this brain trust, the 5 founders. And essentially at the beginning of 2022, we start work on this. It's all a side hustle for all of us. We all have day jobs, right?
Yeah.
And it's a side hustle. And each of us is contributing a little bit here and there, right? Brett has all the relationships. Lindsay has all the relationships. These two have grown up in food. Stuart has the operational acumen. Kenny's building the app. I'm not sure why I was invited, but I'm there along for the party.
Extremely
right?
good looking. That's it.
And all I have, though, is I've got a book of people that I can call to get advice and potentially checks written as we raise money. Right? How do we grow this? How do we scale this? Okay, I'm going to call all the people I worked with in banking and venture capital, and I start to ask questions. How should we think about this? What kinds of terms and conditions should we write? How do we protect ourselves from risk down the line? What kind of data protection should we have in place?
Did you think that you could do it with all private money, of your 5 private money?
No, we knew we couldn't.
You knew you could.
But we knew we could run beta, and at least if we could.
Private money.
Yes. With just our capital, we knew we could get it to a place to launch and test it, then see. Now, in that period of time, in Q1 of 2022, we were accepted to Alabama Launchpad. It's a tech competition here in the state, right? It happens to be, so we went down to Mobile to pitch, but it's statewide, and it's companies mostly in the technology space, right? Okay. So Alabama-based that are taking the state to the next level. And there's a real focus on creating a company that's going to be here, create jobs here, and going to support the local economies. So all of a sudden, Crew becomes an interesting storyline of supporting something that is a real driver for this local GDP. And so we ultimately, in April, win Alabama Launchpad.
Did you win any money?
$25,000.
Okay.
No strings attached, no equity, just grant money.
Just dollars.
Just dollars.
Do what you want to.
Stipulation, we had to hit a couple milestones, but like dollars in the bank, right? And so at that point in time, we start to see this thing actually has real promise. There's people that are testing it. On June 1, we open.
Of 22.
Of 22. We open the app to the public.
Okay.
So in May, we're testing it with some friends. We're getting feedback. We're working with some local restaurants that'll work with us. BLUEROOT's testing it. Yeah. In June, we open it up to the public. And it's wild because we had hundreds of applicants on the talent side waiting to sign up for the app.
So the dishwashers, the prep cooks, the whatever.
Ready to go. Tell me when and where to sign up. And it was really, I thought it would have been the other way around. I thought businesses would have been clamoring to use it. Until I took a big step back.
It's a hard sell. It's not a hard sell. It's like I didn't know Brett. And Brett's the one that I talked to. I didn't know Brett. And so if I've known Brett, but I knew Tina. Yeah. And like if Tina trusts you, I trust you. Same thing with Lindsay and you. And so it's a little bit of a harder sell because like some of the stuff we do is not like you got to be coached and trained.
Yeah, for sure. And so the question for us was that's the question we kept getting. Well, how do we narrow the scope to be able to support businesses? And how do we make sure that people are happy and satisfied with the experience? Okay, well, now we know we're probably not going to support Frank and Chris. Okay, maybe fine dining is out. Maybe large scale events where they need 40 bartenders, we can't support that.
But there's 10 of those in Birmingham.
Yes.
15 of those in Birmingham, and there's 1,000 that are.
So what about the fast casual play where they need bodies? Okay, so for me at BLUEROOT, I was a case study. I didn't necessarily need somebody that was going to be able to help chef and our, maybe one person back there prepping. I needed one person to wipe down tables during the rush, somebody to pour tea, somebody to put lids on and bag things up, just one more body during lunch just to make that experience pleasant. Wash dishes, clean up, sanitize, wash the wind, whatever it might be, right? One more body. Because and I know that when you're understaffed, before the era of apps, I phone a friend. I've got a text thread of people that I would call on, and most of those people are a few that I know could call 10 other people. I am in desperate need. Can you help me today? Can you help me today? And that's not very efficient, but I knew that there was credibility in that because those people on my text thread or those people that were in the saved list that I had, they were hospitality people. Yeah. And they said, call me if you ever need somebody. But I'm not sure when they're available. No. They're not sure when I need somebody. So Crew takes all of the guessing out. So now all those people that were on the other side of the text thread that all of us use and all of us have, there are 5 million Americans that pick up jobs on the side in hospitality, right? These are restaurant workers that have a double shift somewhere else. They're on the other side of that text thread. Now Crew takes out the guessing, and so they're able to apply based on the schedule.
There's a lot of people on there, the guys that I've used, there's a guy that I've used multiple times that he's like, I can come all week. Yeah. And the honest thing is, all you were doing with Crew is you're putting it in the workers' hands to say, I want to work on Thursday. Because all these people, guys and girls, can work whenever they want to. So there's one girl that works for us that leaves here and goes and works another shift. Yeah. So she works 2 shifts a day when she works. Sure. So she can literally pick and choose when she wants to work. Yeah. And so I think that's part of it is like this generation, because all the people that have worked, with the exception of one, are all within the same age range. Yeah. And there's some trends there, for sure. The demographic is clear. There are outliers, though, too. But I hired a 75-year-old, and it, whatever. But like, there was one of those.
A little outlier.
I've probably done 20 shifts, maybe more. Yeah. So I was on the front end of this thing. Like, like in the fall, because we did it in the fall. Wow, I did not realize you had just started.
Just started. So June was the beginning, but I mean, it's what they call a cold start problem, right? You have to essentially light a fire when no one knows you.
Is it profitable yet?
That's a good question. No.
You're not hemorrhaging money, but
we're not hemorrhaging money. No. But again, this goes back to our decision on how we're growing, right? We're not just throwing cash out the window to go grow. We have been really judicious on how we're growing.
Yeah.
But we started to raise capital. So we use our own money up to the Alabama Launchpad time. And come Q3 of 2022, it's like, okay, there's some legs on this thing, there's some momentum. It's time to go see if we want to raise some capital from some angel investors in town, right? People that are friends of the business that have said to us, when you raise, we want to support you, right? Not talking like Silicon Valley institutional money just yet. And so our friend,
not millions and millions of dollars.
No.
Thousands and thousands of dollars.
$1 million.
Okay.
So total.
Okay.
So we raised $1 million and we closed our round in November.
Okay.
And most of that capital, it came from a combination of angel investors, people in town that said, people that know the tech industry or the entrepreneurial industry and said, we want to continue to throw logs on the fire there.
Right.
And then we have our lead investor is an early stage venture capital firm that's out of town. They're out of state. They're in the Midwest. And they saw us and they're like, well, this is really interesting. We're seeing synergies of what y'all are doing with the needs of our other portfolio companies. Maybe there's, an interesting opportunity there.
Okay, so someone that does no idea what to do, and I'm part of one of those.
Yeah.
No idea what to do when you get funding.
Yes.
Do you have any restrictions on the funding?
Not unless those investors put any restrictions on you, right?
So let's just say they don't.
Outside of ethics, right? Let's say they,
Yeah.
Let's say there's no restrictions
You're not buying
on
jets and strippers.
No.
Okay.
No, but what most investors will do, if they've done this before, is they ask for some clarity on how you're going to spend it before they write the check.
How are you going to spend my money?
And then they say, let's check in and keep telling me how you're spending my money. And so for us, it was very clear we were focused on three things. We're focused on the tech, right? Building of the product, growth, how do we go expand to new markets, and people, the bodies, the resources we needed to support that growth, and the tech, right? So three things. And that's always how we were going to spend the $1 million. And that's how we told Launchpad we were going to spend $1 million if we raised any capital from them and raised or earned any from them and then raised anywhere else. So we raised that money in 2022. And that was the gas in the tank that we needed to go really grow Crew. And in 2023, we're hopeful to go out and expand across the Southeast in very specific markets and hit 12 to 20 of them.
When will you act? When will you start? Will you need to start another round of funding?
Yes. And that is predicated on how quickly we grow, right? So what the uptake and like the velocity of how fast we can go do this and go to another market and do it successfully. And if we budgeted properly, right? When you're doing something for the first time, it's a little bit of I think it's going to cost us this much. So these first couple markets are going to stress test whether or not a pro forma is, really, really, really tight.
How is Tuscaloosa and Auburn doing?
Different. Auburn, hot. Doing well, but we've invested more time in Auburn. Tuscaloosa, newer, investing more now, right? So they're at different phases.
Muscle Shoals, how's that doing?
It's event driven, so it kind of depends on what's happening, right? So it's a little bit less. Like Birmingham by far posts and picks up the most shifts, right?
Million people in metro area. Yeah.
Auburn next. Tuscaloosa is where we're starting to spend more time investing. I put the Muscle Shoals and Florence area in there as more event oriented. When things are happening, we have abilities to be supported there. Jacksonville, Gainesville, Savannah, Atlanta. I mean, these are some of the examples.
Atlanta could be huge.
Huge.
Where are the most dollars spent? Like out of $1 million, where's the most money spent? Like the line item. Okay, this is the largest.
It's always people in any business, right? It's always people. Now, like it costs a little bit to have, we don't have a very big team, but we're doing a lot of the work. But some of that money goes to outside resources, contractors that are helping with the app, or the interns, or this, and those guys don't cost that much. But when you put it all together, people, that line item, that labor, is the biggest one. The next biggest is just growth to go into a new market. The question for us is how much does that cost with everything?
That's what I was going to ask.
It's really hard to determine. So we have more than a back of the envelope calculation, but it's everything from marketing to that referral program to that, do we need to fly our founders in and like actually activate and shake hands with people? Are we giving away subscriptions for free? I mean, all of these things cost money.
Do you have salespeople?
Our founders, right? We got 5 founders and we're essentially the salespeople.
So you'll call and go into places in Atlanta and to the people and then talk to the guy that that's a chef here. Hey, can you introduce me to 5 people?
That's Brett, right?
Yeah.
Brett is pounding the pavement every single day. Brett and Stuart are diligencing every new market to understand what's interesting, what's not. What does the regulation look like? Are there competitors there? What kind of key partnerships could we bring? I mean, this is really, when you're starting a business like this is a blank sheet of paper.
Sure.
We're making this up as we go based on all of what we've learned of those last 9 months.
Yeah.
And now we've got some learnings.
Okay, so I'm going to transition here real quick. So obviously all the work that you've done, you've went from all the things we've talked about. You have a kid now.
I do.
How has that changed your work ethic? Excuse me. How has it changed your work time?
Time is everything.
Sure.
I'm going to answer the question. It's changed everything is the short answer.
Yeah.
My husband was listening to a podcast the other day, and he said he had this phrase that he had heard from the podcast, and it said, "Die with zero." Mm-hmm. And the idea was we wait until the end of our lives to go do all the things that matter, right? And if you flip that on its head, and you really, as we get older, we know this, money does not make you happy, right? These things that are, superficial just don't. And so it goes back to priorities. Yeah. And look, everyone's going to be different. For me in this phase right now, I care a lot about these two businesses. I care about the people that we're employing. I care about the communities we're supporting.
It's your two other kids.
My two other kids.
Yeah.
But the point is, I have an 18-month-old at home, right? 19 months now. Yeah. And that is the priority. So now we do the things we do as parents, right? Yeah. Mike and my alarm go off at 4 o'clock in the morning or 4:30 in the morning, and that's the time to work out, journal, have a cup of coffee, have the minute to get ready for the day.
Nothing
and then it's
drinking, nothing dinging, nothing's crying.
And then Vaughn's up, and we get that time, and then the workday starts, and we're powering through, and here we are at the end of the day, and this is special time, and I don't answer the phone between 5 and 8 because bedtime, bath time, family time is pretty sacred.
All those things.
Yeah. And I've chosen to keep working in this space, and I try to be really thoughtful with my time. I'm not perfect at it, by the way.
No.
I'm not great. There are moments I look at, I think, oh, what a dingbat. I've got my phone going and this going. I'm trying to do things at once.
You got a phone in one hand, a kid in one hand. Yeah, we've all screwed that up. Okay, let's shift gears a little bit there too. So there's a lot of people that listen and watch that love investing. Do you guys do anything outside of Crew BLUEROOT? Where do you take your money and you put your money in other places?
Family?
Okay.
Is that what you're asking?
No. No, any other businesses, any other passive things, anything that
you're asking doing, Mike and me,
anything that you guys do right now?
Yeah, there are businesses that are early in stage that we've come across, whether they're people that we know or products that we've used that we really like. I'm going to refrain from naming any of them right now. But yeah, those are where we believe, and it goes back to, if you have the capital and you understand the risk associated venture when you're investing in early stage stuff, it's the riskiest of the risky. You just, zero hero. But if we know those founders and we really believe in the products, there are a couple that we've really been thoughtful about. Real estate investing is something I've got a little bit of acumen in both sides of the family. We're able to call people that know more than we do, and that's been interesting too. But really, the liability on our family balance sheet right now is our two businesses. And that's where we're investing a lot of our own personal capital, time. And so a lot of it too, in terms of just passive capital, sitting in a Vanguard fund. I'm not trying to beat the market. I'm not trying to.
It's too much to learn.
I'm not trying to pick stocks. And that's not my forte. And I'm sure you could pay people to do that, but we found it to be better for us to be able to put capital aside. And now with savings rates, things are sitting in okay.
How is BLUEROOT doing as we kind of wind down here? Here we are, late January of 23. How's BLUEROOT doing? 18
months in, we are cash flow positive.
Man.
But the thing is, we've got debt, right? That debt that I mentioned before. And so it's there, and it's a journey,
Yeah, but it's just like the power bill in a way.
Yeah, that's fair.
I mean, you know what I'm saying? It's just like a power bill. Your power bill is $300 a month, $500 a month. Your debt payment is $1,000, whatever. It's just a power bill. And if you're cash flow positive at the end of every month, that's it. It's a huge thing, especially for someone that's in the food.
Right. That's exactly right. And that we have gotten smarter and better. I made so many mistakes.
Oh,
so many mistakes. I can't tell you how many things I thought were important that really weren't, or things that I should have prioritized that I just didn't know. And that's where you lean on, you really get clear with yourself on what your acumen is, and lean on people that have done this before. I am not afraid or embarrassed. I am unabashedly calling mentors and supporters. How have you dealt with this? Yeah. How have you handled this? Pardon me?
What do you do
Yeah,
here?
yeah.
What do you do there?
How do you handle this? And people, because I've been vulnerable and honest and open, they're the same with me, right? They're like, oh, I really messed this exact thing up 10 years ago. Here's how I navigated that. Let me show you my P&L and how I manage these types of things. We've gotten better, right? Labor costs, food costs, smarter with the people that we employ and how we deploy their skills, how we grow those people, the types of things we have on the menu. We've narrowed, just trying to be smarter. And you've got to do all those things, but at the end of the day, we're still making mistakes. We're a startup. And it pains me, this is hard to say out loud to a public forum, it pains me when someone says, you didn't get this right, or you made a mistake here, or I really wish you could have done X, Y, Z instead of that. And it is like a dagger through the heart for an owner. But I got to hear it. I've got to hear it for us to get better and for us to get stronger. But we're still in those early nascent days. We're 18 months old.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. So I give us a little bit of grace, but I tell my team every day, it's a miracle we're alive. We opened during the pandemic. We have a tiny team.
The $6,000 you made, I go back to that story. I think that's great. So
it's wild.
But hey, thank you so much for being here. This has been so good. And
what a gift.
Your story is awesome, and I love the fact that I didn't know any of this, and so all the random questions that I asked.
I love everything about it.
So thank you so much again.
What a gift. Thank you for having me.
Yes, ma'am.
Really appreciate
where
it.
can people find the crew, BLUEROOT, you, whatever?
Yes.
Whether it be social, websites, whatever.
Social is the best, and that's great, or a website. Let's start with BLUEROOT.
Yep.
BLUEROOT CO is BLUEROOT Code. That's on Instagram. That's a wonderful spot to follow us and hear what's going on. www.bluerootco.com. Find all the insights.
Yes, exactly.
And then for crew, it's crew.co. You can go there.
CROUX.
You got it. Or download the app.
Download the app.
And hey, if you're a talent, you want to pick up some shifts, whether you have all the experience in the world or none, download the shifts or the app and it's free. Start picking up shifts and start meeting great people and earning cash.
Anybody in hospitality, whether you own something or work there, it's great.
Yeah.
I put my stamp of approval on it. It is wonderful.
We're so great. Hey, last shout out to the city of Birmingham who opened its proverbial arms to an outsider like me that had no business doing what I'm doing. I don't think this could have been done in any big city. I think we would have been eaten alive in any other large metropolis. And Birmingham, you made it happen.
And I am so glad they did because I'm so glad you're here.
So grateful.
Yep,
what a blast.
All right.
Thanks
Guys.